where today we're diving into the unprecedented, government-ordered shutdown of Anthropic's most capable AI models. Make no mistake, this isn't some planned maintenance outage or your standard product recall. We are looking at the very first government-forced takedown of a publicly deployed frontier AI model, completely pulling the plug on Claude Fable 5 and Claude Mythos 5.
3 days. That is exactly how incredibly brief Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5 were actually live in the hands of the public before being forced offline. To put that into perspective, these highly anticipated models were launched with massive fanfare, only to be entirely disabled just 72 hours later. It's a total whiplash scenario, and frankly, it's something the developer community has never really seen before at this kind of scale.
So what actually triggered this sudden takedown? Well, on June 12, 2026, the U.S. Commerce Department issued a strict export control directive. This directive specifically barred any access to these models by foreign nationals, whether they were sitting inside or outside the United States. And get this, that even included Anthropic's own foreign national employees. Because Anthropic's infrastructure literally couldn't filter foreign nationals from U.S. users in real time, they were completely backed into a corner. To ensure full compliance with the government order, they had to pull the plug entirely for everyone. Section 1. Timeline of the takedown.
Okay, let's dive into this and see how this incredibly rapid timeline unfolded. On June 9th, Anthropic launched Fable 5 publicly, keeping the more powerful Mythos 5 strictly for trusted Project Glasswing partners. Between June 9th and June 12th, early adopters were already running massive coding and research tests. But right in the middle of that window, a rival company claimed they had successfully jailbroken the Mythos model. That single claim set off immediate alarm bells in Washington. By 5:21 p.m. Eastern Time on June 12, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick sent a direct export control letter to Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei. And by that very evening, just hours later, all access to both Fable 5 and Mythos 5 was completely disabled.
Section 2. The jailbreak dispute. Now, what's really interesting here is the massive disconnect between how both sides view the actual security risk. Let's look at this neutrally. The U.S. government determined that the rival's jailbreak claim posed a potential national security risk, one that absolutely warranted a total suspension until the model's safety could be fully verified. Anthropic, on the other hand, views this as a massive misunderstanding. They argue the so-called jailbreak is just a narrow, non-universal flaw where the model is essentially asked to read a codebase and fix flaws. They point out that this is not some universal bypass and that similar capabilities are already widely available out there in other public models, specifically calling out OpenAI's GPT 5.5 as a comparable example.
Which brings us to a really stark warning from Anthropic. They stated, a narrow jailbreak should not justify a full recall. This standard would halt new deployments industry-wide. Anthropic is essentially telling the government and the broader tech community that if an unverified narrow vulnerability becomes the new benchmark for shutting down an AI model, it could completely freeze all future frontier model deployments across the entire tech sector. It's a massive line in the sand regarding how AI should be regulated moving forward.
Section 3. Features and lost capabilities.
To really grasp why this shutdown hurts developers so badly, we have to look at what these models were actually doing. The disruption to real-world use cases is just immense. In just 3 days, Stripe used Fable 5 to compress months of engineering work into days, migrating a 50 million-line Ruby codebase. In finance, Harriet noted that Fable 5 ranked highest on its benchmark. Using its crazy vision capabilities, Fable 5 was rebuilding web app code just from screenshots, and it even beat the game Pokemon Fire Red using a vision-only harness. Over in security and science, Mozilla resolved hundreds of vulnerabilities while internal experts at Project Glasswing accelerated parts of their drug design by 10 times. Every single one of these workflows is now entirely paused. Imagine having months of your team's engineering progress halted overnight.
Section 4. How the safeguards work.
So the crucial point here is understanding how Anthropic actually tried to keep these models safe in the first place. They employed a defense-in-depth strategy. The core of this was the use of classifiers. These are entirely separate AI systems that run right alongside the primary Fable 5 model to constantly detect and flag potential misuse. They paired these classifiers with a 30-day data retention policy to catch novel attacks. And keep in mind, Anthropic red-teamed these exact safeguards for thousands of hours before launch, even working directly with the US government and the UK AI Safety Institute. An external bug bounty spanning over 1,000 hours found absolutely zero universal jailbreaks.
Let's see how this builds and operates in real time. Step 1. You send a query. Step 2. Those classifier models instantly scan the prompt, specifically hunting for cybersecurity, biology and chemistry, or model distillation risks. Step 3. If the prompt is totally safe, Fable 5 answers you directly. But if a risk is flagged, the system gracefully and safely falls back. It reroutes you to the older, safer Claude Opus 4.8 model and immediately alerts you that a fallback just occurred.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how precise that safety net was. According to Anthropic's data, fewer than 5% of queries actually triggered a fallback to Opus 4.8. That means over 95% of the time, users were safely getting the full power of Fable 5 directly without hitting any of the classifier tripwires. It was completely designed to offer maximum capability, but with a really tight, specific safety net. But, right now, that entire routing system is totally irrelevant. Here is exactly where we currently stand. Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5 are completely disabled for everyone. If you try to use the API string for Fable 5 right now, it'll just throw an error. Developers are currently being forced to migrate their active projects back to Claude Opus 4.8 or other models like Sonnet and Haiku, which gratefully remain fully online and unaffected by the Commerce Department's directive.
Section 5. Developer Fallout.
So how is the actual builder community reacting to this first-ever government takedown? Well, sentiment is heavily skewed against the shutdown. Based on public reactions, 38% of the developer community views this as massive government overreach that sets a highly dangerous precedent. Another 24% are extremely skeptical, believing the actual risk of the jailbreak has been drastically overstated. 20% are mainly focused on the sheer disruption to builders who had live workflows paused mid-project. Only about 10% are actively supportive of the administration's national security caution, while 8% are pivoting their focus entirely toward the absolute necessity of sovereign and open-source models.
Which brings us to a massive, highly provocative question to wrap up this explainer. If the US government can unilaterally unplug a frontier model globally over a single, disputed vulnerability claim from a rival, what happens next? Will developers ever trust relying on hosted, centralized API models again, or is this unprecedented shutdown going to be the exact catalyst that pushes the entire industry to abandon hosted models entirely, retreating to self-hosted, open-weight AI development just to guarantee their tools won't disappear overnight? It is a fascinating question, and one the tech industry is going to be wrestling with for years to come.